My adoptive parents kicked me out when they found their biological daughter. I didn't even have time to feel sad before a graceful woman hugged me. Her eyes were red, and she was emotional. Daughter, Mom finally found you. Turns out, my real identity is actually a long-lost daughter of a wealthy family. After my part-time job ended, I went home with the gift I just bought. Before I could even enter the house, my adoptive mother threw me a suitcase. Ella has been found. It's time for you, the fake one, to leave. When I was 6, my adoptive parents took me from the orphanage. I thought it was the start of a good life, but it turned out to be the beginning of endless suffering. The first day back, my brother sprayed me with a water gun, soaking me to the bone, which made me sick for a day and a night. I nearly burnt up with fever. My adoptive father just sat on the couch and shot me a glance. While flipping through his newspaper, he said, "Behave yourself and don't dream of things that aren't yours." My adoptive mother was nice to me for a while, but she eventually treated me like a stranger since I wasn't her real child. I stood at the foot of the stairs for a few seconds, then lifted my head and nodded obediently. Okay, I understand. I picked up the suitcase from the ground. I felt a bit sad but mostly happy. Couldn't help but almost grin. After all, my days at home were worse than a maid's. I had to get up before dawn every day to make breakfast, and each person wanted something different. Taking care of this big family wore me out, making me bear responsibilities that weren't suitable for my age. Even a paid maid would get a salary, but I did it all for free. Still, they did raise me, so I had to show some courtesy. I said, "Thank you for taking care of me all these years. When you're old, I will take care of you." But I think they misunderstood, assuming I was eyeing their assets. My adoptive father snorted, showing a typical expression as he threw me a piece of paper. I caught it. It was a declaration to sever ties. This meant I no longer had any relation to them and no obligation to care for them. Maybe they had a tiny bit of care for me, after all. I quickly signed my name, pressed my fingerprint, and squeezed out 2 fake tears. "Mom, Dad, bro, I'm leaving. Here are the gifts I got for you, let's call it a parting gift." I pulled out the prepared gifts, turned my head and ignored them. "Ella, my adoptive parents' real daughter," exclaimed from the stairs, "Louis Vuitton." "Chloe, where did you get the money for luxury items?" It was the first time I looked at her since she returned home. She had a small, pale face. I feigned grievance. "I earned it myself." "But it's so expensive, Chloe." "Wasn't it?" She trailed off, but we all knew what she meant, fake goods. I fell into deep thought. Were my counterfeit gifts discovered? Couldn't be. I used a top-notch fake goods supplier. Ella mistook my silence, and my adoptive mother snapped, "Chloe, I can't believe you're so vain. Take your trash and get lost." I packed the gifts back into the bag, sighed inwardly. Although my previous gifts were fake, this one was real. An hour later, I stood on the street with my Shinchan suitcase, feeling lost. This big city had no place for me. I tucked the Louis Vuitton box under my arm. Just as I took a step, a luxury car stopped in front of me. I didn't recognize it, but it surely looked expensive. I stepped back, silently. I couldn't afford a scratch on it. The car's back door opened, and a graceful beauty stepped out. We made eye contact for a few seconds. Just when I was about to turn away, she suddenly lunged at me and hugged me. "Daughter. Mom finally found you." I was stunned. She cried while hugging me for quite a while, before letting go. I was dizzy and confused. She grabbed my hand, trying to take me into the car. I quickly regained my senses. "Ma'am, did you mistake me for someone else?" She gently touched my head, her face full of tender affection. "No mistake, you're my daughter. You have a heart-shaped birthmark on your buttock, don't you?" I looked at her terrified, thinking, how does she know such a private thing? She seemed to understand my thoughts and explained, "Your age and birthmark match. No mistake." As she spoke, her eyes reddened again. I couldn't bear to see her tears and quickly held her hand. "Please don't cry. All right. Let's go home first." I'll explain everything there. By the way, your name is Chloe now, right? She asked me. I nodded, then, like being possessed, followed her into the car. The car's air conditioning cleared my head. I then fell into regret and fear. How did I get in? What if she's a fraud? Me, a young girl, what if? The more I thought, the more scared I became, feeling helpless. Thankfully, the beauty just silently cried, doing nothing else. Reaching the destination, I was immediately hugged by someone with a warm, slightly fragrant smell. Sis, you're finally back. I mumbled a response, thinking, this family-like surprise is finally free. I was nearly blinded by the grand estate before me. Once inside, I felt a sense of reality sinking in. Hesitant, I softly spoke, Ma'am, Madam. Chloe, I'm your mom. I looked at her flawless, at most 30-year-old face, unable to call her mom. After a while, she handed me an envelope, signaling me to open it. I opened it. Inside was a paternity test report, confirming she was indeed my mother. In the face of science, I believed. According to her story, I went missing when I was 1 year old. They spent a long time searching for me. 16 years later, they finally found me. As she talked, she started crying again. My nose stung, and tears almost fell from my eyes. I thought I was an orphan without parents, but it turns out I have parents who love me very much. Mom, Chloe's back. It's a good thing. That was my second brother, Mike, who almost hugged me to death at the door just now. As for my eldest brother, Steve, my mom said he's a genius doctor who's obsessed with medical skills. Whether he's a genius or not, I think it's still up for debate. Sniffing, I cautiously asked, Mom, where's Dad? My mom wiped her tears and gently said, he went abroad on a business trip. He'll be back soon. Just as she finished speaking, a roaring sound came from outside. Look, Dad's back. I looked out the window and saw a private jet slowly landing. Is this real? The moment I saw my dad, I recognized him. It would be strange not to know the famous richest man. To avoid being unexpectedly hugged by him, I rushed up first, Dad. His voice choked up. Blood ties are a miraculous thing. I stayed with my adoptive parents for 10 years and never felt close to them. But with my real parents and brothers, whom I just met, I naturally felt drawn to them. During dinner, Steve rushed back, travel-worn. Trying to preempt him like I did that afternoon, I got ready to make the first move, but I have to admit, med students have fast reflexes. Before I could move, I found myself in another unfamiliar embrace. This time, I took control and patted Steve on the shoulder with relief. Long time no see. He stared blankly at first, then his eyes reddened. Chloe, it's all my fault. If I had watched you properly, you wouldn't have suffered so much outside. I wanted to say it wasn't that bad. At the orphanage, the director was good to me. Later, when I was adopted, although I had to do chores, I had food, drink, a place to stay, and school. It wasn't really suffering. But he seemed convinced I had a hard time. Before I could react, his hand was on my wrist, checking my pulse. After a few seconds, he said, strong and steady pulse. Seems healthy. Then he slightly frowned, murmuring, body's fine. Could it be mental trauma? I fell silent. Steve, look at me. Do I look mentally traumatized? The next day, my parents said they wanted to throw a party to announce my return. They sought my opinion. After thinking it over, I refused, not because I wanted to keep a low profile, but because I wouldn't know anyone there. It would be boring. So, only a few close people knew about their long-lost daughter's return. However, I heard my adoptive parents threw a grand party to introduce Ella and even sent an invitation to my parents. Unfortunately, it didn't reach my parents, as the butler intercepted it and threw it in the trash. I happened to see that discarded invitation in the trash while getting a drink in the kitchen. After that, many classmates, pretending to care, sent messages to mock me. What they didn't know was that my mom had invited Chanel's chief designer to our home to design exclusive outfits for me. A month was enough for me to accept my new identity, and the semester quietly arrived. My original school was for nobles, and since I was in my last year of high school, I had no plans to transfer. To my surprise, as soon as I entered the classroom, I saw Ella and Ethan. Chloe. Ella first looked surprised, then her face showed an indescribable sympathy. Chloe, are you here to get your stuff? My stuff? What stuff? A classmate asked while packing his desk. Don't you know? Chloe has moved out of my house. She probably can't afford this school anymore. Ella's voice gradually lowered, and she glanced at me cautiously. Ignorant human. I didn't want to entangle with them. But they clearly thought otherwise. Ethan rushed up, glaring at me. Chloe, did you steal money from my family? First, I'm no longer your family's daughter. Second, you packed my things when I left. You don't know if I took money? Unable to refute, he started to throw a fit. I helplessly pinched my forehead, wondering how I tolerated this scam for years. Slowly, I pulled a roll of tape from my backpack, tore off a piece, and stuck it on his mouth. Finally, peace. As a result, I felt 2 glares on my back all day. On the second day of school, we had an entrance exam. Before school ended, Ella came up to me and comforted, Chloe, the exam's tomorrow. I heard from my brother you were first in the grade. That's impressive. As soon as she said that, the class burst into laughter. First in the grade? That's hilarious. Ella, Ethan didn't tell you the first place was from the bottom. Ella gasped, quickly covering her mouth. Sorry, Chloe, I had no idea. It's okay, I said, what you said is true, in a way. Her lips started quivering, and she seemed about to cry. For heaven's sake, I neither insulted her nor touched her. A classmate next to her defended her. Chloe, why bully Ella? She's good at studying. You're just jealous because you're not. Jealous of her? I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to show what I can do. If not jealousy, then prove it by beating Ella in the exam tomorrow. I thought for a moment, then agreed readily. Ella tried to broker peace. Chloe, she didn't mean to say that. Don't take it to heart. If only your mouth didn't grin from ear to ear, I might have believed you. I replied, I'm not mad. The next morning, Ethan swaggered in and knocked on my desk. I was organizing my stationery and ignored him. He felt slighted and knocked harder. I finally looked up at him. I heard you did better on this test than Ella. Who told you that? He was stumped for a few seconds before saying, it doesn't matter. How about a bet? If you don't score higher than Ella, you drop out yourself. I said, I don't bet. Are you scared? I didn't respond. Are you too chicken to bet? I still didn't say anything. His weak goading wasn't going to work on me. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Ethan got frustrated. You're such a coward. More and more people started to gather around. Helplessly, I shrugged and said, fine, I'll bet. If I do better than Ella, then she should drop out instead. Ethan laughed at my words. How could you possibly do better than Ella? I'm asking you, do you agree to the bet or not? I insisted. Of course, nodded Ethan. Walking around campus, everyone looked at me with either pity or schadenfreude. The closer it got to the results day, the more intense those looks became. People who didn't know better might have thought they had a crush on me. At noon, the results were finally out. I yawned at my seat. Last night, I stayed up late playing games with Mike, and almost didn't wake up this morning. My calm composure was mistaken by Ethan and Ella as guilt. Ella approached me with a worried look. Chloe, it's just a bet. I won't take it to heart. Oh, I replied. From a young age, our teachers taught us to honor our word. Ethan also came to my desk. Chloe, get ready to leave school. Of course, if you apologize to us publicly, you can stay. This guy looked decent on the outside but was clearly not all there. Their family was bound for bankruptcy someday soon. Chloe, it's okay if you didn't do well. As long as there's improvement, that's what counts. If you don't understand something, feel free to ask me anytime, said Ella. Just then, someone rushed in from outside the classroom. Ethan. Chloe is actually the top of the class. No way. Ella screamed. Realizing her outburst, she quickly muttered, "There must be a mistake." I stood up and patted Ella's shoulder sincerely. "It's alright if you didn't do as well as me. Improvement is what matters. If you have any questions, you can ask me anytime." She didn't appreciate my kindness, glaring at me before running out with her face covered. I wondered what I had said wrong. A few days later, during math class, the teacher stormed in. "Chloe, come out." As soon as I stepped out, he yelled at me. "You're a senior. It's bad enough you're not improving, now you're resorting to cheating." I was shocked. "I didn't cheat," I said, stunned. "Didn't cheat? You always score at the bottom, and now you're top of the class. If you didn't cheat, I'll spend the rest of my life walking on my hands." His chest heaved, and the few strands of hair on his head wobbled in his anger. My usual poor performance had made it hard for anyone to believe I was actually a top student. For years, Ethan had threatened me, saying he'd ruin me if I ever scored higher than him. I had no choice but to hide my true potential. "It's been tough, okay? Teacher, I really didn't cheat. I'm the top of the class. Who could I have copied from?" I looked at him sincerely. He was taken aback for a moment, then continued, "Someone reported you had a phone with you." "Who? Who's slandering me? All your scores are cancelled. Come Monday, you'll apologize in front of the whole school. If it happens again, you'll get expelled," he said, storming off. The bell rang, and my classmates crowded around me. "Chloe, so you did cheat. I knew there was no way you could be first. If that's the case, shouldn't you drop out since you have 0 points now?" Their gloating annoyed me. Home, I pretended to cry in my mom's arms. "Mom, someone's bullying your daughter." After I explained, my mom gave a sly smile. "Don't worry, I'll help you get even." On Monday morning, the teacher made me stand by the podium. After he finished announcing, he wanted me to apologize in front of the entire school. Smiling faintly, I faced the crowd. There was a stir below. How dare she smile? The teacher's face turned red. "What are you laughing at? Isn't it okay to smile?" I said innocently. He huffed and ignored me. "Next, I need to reprimand a student from senior class 10. Before he could finish, the principal, well past his prime, dashed to the stage and grabbed the mic. The teacher looked dumbfounded. The principal didn't give him a chance, pushing him off the stage. Only those who had felt the principal's grip knew how strong it was. I was one of the few who did. The principal lived next door in a small villa. Sometimes, he'd stroll by our house with an envious look in his eyes. One day, I ran into him. Recognizing me, I generously showed him around our large estate. In return, he displayed his skill of crushing walnuts with his bare hands. Sure enough, the teacher turned red and almost collapsed. "Hello, students. I am your principal," he raised the mic. The clap of applause was thunderous, and he basked in it, his face glowing with pleasure. "Today, I am here to commend a student from senior class 10. Let's give a warm round of applause." The students stared at me in disbelief before breaking into applause. I admit, I am exceptionally talented. All those competitions, I entered on my own accord, so no one at school knew about them before. Didn't expect it. Besides making money, it came in handy now. Through the crowd, I saw Ella's pale face. I gotta say, it felt a bit sweet. After the meeting ended, as soon as I stepped off the stage, Ella came over. "Chloe, I didn't know you were hiding this. You don't see us as part of your crew or what?" I nodded. "You're right. I certainly don't see you as one of us. My parents are the richest. Who do you think you are?" Ella's face turned dark. As usual, I continued going to school. But my classmates' attitudes towards me changed a lot. Although some still gave me those disdainful looks, I'm big-hearted and don't sweat it. Right then, Mike's game launched its test version. At first, I thought my Mike was just an unemployed game addict since he'd always dragged me into playing. Later, I found out he was a hidden game design genius. The hot game in the current market was Mike's work, bringing him huge profits and fame. So, when his second game, PL, was still in test mode, it drew tons of players. As soon as I sat down in the morning, my desk mate Alex grabbed my arm excitedly. "Chloe, have you heard of the game PL? It just launched its test version." I nodded, of course, I knew. Last night, I played it with Mike for hours until my mom dragged him back to his room by his ear. Fire is my hero. I'd be so lucky to meet him in person. Watching him being all starry-eyed over Mike, I wondered if I should tell him that his hero is actually my brother. Just when I was about to speak, Ella chimed in, "Alex, you mean Fire?" Alex looked at her. "Yeah, do you know him?" Ella shyly smiled, "Not very well. My parents do some business with him, so I've met him a few times." I was dumbfounded, thinking, how come Mike never mentioned knowing her? Alex jumped up from his seat. "Really? Can you get me an autograph or a PL test account?" He scratched his head, looking a bit embarrassed. "The PL test accounts are only 10,000 worldwide, you can only get one through special channels." Ella laughed. "Okay, I'll try." But no promises. I didn't plan to butt in. I wanted to see if she really knew my Mike. Turns out, I underestimated Mike's fame. Half a day later, the whole school knew that Ella knew Fire and could get PL test accounts. Everyone surrounded Ella. She smiled sweetly, occasionally tucking her hair behind her ear. "It's nothing, just acquaintances, so I'll try my best." Like me? Not a chance. He's very considerate though. A day passed, and the school gossip turned into Fire being a loyal suitor of Ella. After school, just outside the gate, Mike, with silver hair, a black mask, and wearing a leather jacket, waited for me on his motorcycle. I pointed to his hair, speechless in shock. He flicked his hair stylishly. "Had an interview today, how do I look?" I nodded. "Don't you usually refuse interviews?" Mike sighed. "Gotta eat, you know." I rolled my eyes. He grabbed my bag, handed me a pink helmet, and patted the bike's rear seat. "Hop on." Just as I was about to get on, Ella called out, "Chloe." She shamelessly continued, "Chloe, my dad's picking me up. Want a ride with us?" She glanced at Mike. "Chloe, don't hang out with these shady types. If you're in trouble, let me know. My parents can help." Mike was about to speak, but I patted his hand to stop him. I pointed at him. "Ella, don't you know him?" She frowned. "Of course not." Suppressing my laugh, I pulled off Mike's mask. "Really don't know him?" Briefly, admiration flashed in her eyes but vanished quickly. She angrily questioned, "What do you mean, Chloe? Am I supposed to know this thug?" "Of course not." I smoothly swung onto the bike, waved happily, "See ya." Following days, Ella's lies kept on. Mike didn't expose her, probably enjoying the attention. Soon though, people questioned her when she couldn't show any proof. She changed her story, claiming Fire valued fairness, so no cheating. Being low-key, he didn't do autographs. Alex lay on his desk, sighing. I couldn't bear it. Back home, I told Mike. He waved his hand grandly, giving me 10 insider accounts, each allowing 10 players online. Next morning, I handed them to Alex. He gasped at me, "Chloe, you're my hero." After calming down, he asked how I got them. I replied, "My brother gave them to me." He nodded knowingly and whispered, "Don't worry, Chloe, I won't rat out your brother." I nodded, unsure what he meant but thought it's no big deal. Unexpectedly, over a week later, police showed up. I was baffled, taken to the station, charged with theft. It turned out that one of the junior managers at my brother's company somehow found out about my game account. He thought I acquired it through illegal means for profit and called the police. The police walked me out in front of the whole class. Before leaving, I saw Ella in the back row, smirking with satisfaction. "I didn't mess with you, but you chose to mess with me." At the police station, I called Mike, and the officers finally realized it was a misunderstanding. As a result, around noon, the police car drove me back to school. My desk mate Alex saw me and hugged my arm, sobbing, Chloe, I'm sorry. I didn't keep it secret well, and now you're caught in this. From his scattered words, I pieced together the truth. As it turns out, Alex initially thought I got those accounts through improper means. He carelessly shared his guess with someone else, igniting a wildfire of gossip. Eventually, someone with bad intentions exploited it. It's no big deal. I patted his shoulder and said earnestly, since it's your first time, I won't hold it against you. Alex looked up with a pitiful expression, thank you. Senior year coursework was way heavier than before, and school ended later too. We didn't finish evening classes until 9:30 p.m. My parents were worried about me going home alone at night, so they decided to have a driver pick me up. But looking at that array of high-profile Maseratis, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces in the garage, I firmly rejected the idea. As a result, Mike, who had nothing better to do, took on the role of my driver. He never complained, come rain or shine, riding his little moped to pick me up at the school gate. For a short while, it was no big deal, but the longer it went on, the more people started talking. I stood my ground, not caring about the rumors. But I didn't expect it to blow up this much. Alex, holding his phone, anxiously told me I was in big trouble. A blogger posted about a high school student being kept by a sugar daddy. The post said I was cunning and lazy, got kicked out by my adoptive family, and, used to a luxurious life, I began looking for sugar daddies. First was the principal. I was seen acting close to him, with a photo attached as proof. Then there was a punk with silver hair who rode a bike to pick me up daily. It said he wasn't a good person and had been to jail for stealing game accounts. Now, I had a new man, and there was a picture of me getting out of a Rolls-Royce. If I said now that the principal was my neighbor, the punk was my brother, and the new man was my dad, would anyone believe me? My classmates comforted me, Chloe, we believe you, don't be sad. Honestly, I wasn't that sad. I said, the punk is my brother, and the guy with the Rolls-Royce is my dad. As soon as I finished, laughter erupted from behind me. Chloe, you mean sugar daddy. His words made the whole class laugh. I had a headache. It was my fault for being too low-key before. The post quickly went viral, and the rumors and gossip about me surged. People dug up more and more info, including lies. Some said I looked especially vain, always wearing fakes. They said, if you don't have money, don't wear them, it's embarrassing. I wanted to say, what fakes? These are custom-made, one-of-a-kind pieces. Others claimed I was deceitful and my awards were fake. Who said they were fake? I had proof. While I was figuring out how to clear my name, Ella came up to me and placed an invitation on my desk. Chloe, my parents are hosting a party tomorrow night, and several reporters will be there. You can admit your mistake and apologize in front of everyone, and this will all blow over. How considerate of her. After all, we are still family. Family, my foot. But, attending the party would be a good way to clear my name and maybe mess up her plans. That night, I went viral nationwide. My family was so furious that they wanted to take action for me. I calmed them down, saying not to act yet and wait for tomorrow night's drama. My appearance created a stir, but Ella must have briefed the reporters beforehand because they just kept their cameras on me without approaching. Ella held my hand affectionately, making it look like we were close. Chloe, don't worry. I've spoken with the reporters. You don't have to be afraid. I nodded absent-mindedly, not wanting to deal with her. Her face darkened, and she led me to a group of socialites to introduce me. This is Chloe, my sister. A girl in a pale yellow dress gave me a disdainful look. Ella, why'd you bring anyone here? Look at what she's wearing, so embarrassing. I looked down at my gown. Any problem? It's a one-of-a-kind, limited edition. A bunch of clueless women. Don't say that. I'm happy Chloe came. She just doesn't know these etiquettes. Ella turned to me. Chloe, let me find you a new dress. I said, no, this one's fine. She looked troubled, but, it looks so cheap. I walked past her, glancing at the big screen where Chanel's chief designer was being interviewed. Of course, this is my proudest piece this year. A worldwide exclusive, just one made. The camera panned to a gown identical to mine. Gasps erupted around me, and the socialites started looking at me differently. Ella stood frozen, her face grim, and after a long pause, forced a smile. It's a coincidence, right? The screen voiceover continued. It was specially designed for a girl named Chloe. Ella's face turned pale as a ghost. I was almost giddy with joy. She quickly regained her composure, pretending nothing had happened. Chloe, didn't you say you had friends coming with you? Where are they? I stretched my neck to look towards the door as a Rolls-Royce drove into the venue. I picked up my dress and ran towards the entrance. They're here, they're here. Seeing me come out, reporters swarmed towards me. Miss Chloe, can we have an interview with you? I wanted to rush out, but there were too many people, so I nodded my head instead. This is a live broadcast. Can you clarify the recent rumors about you? You are quite young and yet act recklessly. Does your family know about this? Online sources say you're a gold digger and extremely vain. What do you have to say about that? There were too many questions. My head began to spin. Just then, the car stopped, and my dad stepped out with my mom and my 2 brothers. As soon as they got out, they caught everyone's attention. Oh my God, it's the Vincent family. They never attend events like this, do they? I looked towards my former foster parents. They were shocked at first, then their faces filled with excitement as they quickly walked forward. Mr. Vincent, it's an honor to have you here, said my foster dad, bending low with a fawning smile. His outstretched hand trembled. My foster mom stood beside him, visibly nervous. My dad didn't even glance at them. He scanned the venue until he saw me, then walked over. Ella stood just ahead of me. I could see her every move, even the expression on her face clearly. She was gripping her dress tightly. As my dad got closer, her grip tightened, and the veins on her face became visible. When he reached her, my dad stopped. Ella looked up at him, her face full of joy. Before she could say anything, my dad waved at me with a gentle smile. Chloe, come over. Ella looked at me in shock. I giggled, forgot to introduce, this is my dad. Her face instantly turned pale, and she looked like she was about to collapse. Reporters rushed forward again, pushing her aside. We were surrounded. I introduced everyone. The principal is actually my neighbor. The guy you call a delinquent is my brother Mike. He's the famous fire, and he gave me his account. I didn't get it illegally. And the Rolls-Royce, that's my dad's car. This is my mom, Jenny. She used to be a famous designer, and most of my clothes are custom-made by her. This is my other brother, Steve. He's a doctor. Each time I said something, there was a collective gasp. When I finished, the venue fell into an eerie silence. After a long while, a reporter nervously held up a microphone. Mr. Vincent. Before he could finish, my dad gruffly replied, no comment. I sighed, Dad, don't be so harsh. He immediately softened, all right. Then he turned to the reporter with a warm smile and asked, what did you want to know? The reporter rolled his eyes and fainted. We didn't stay long. Before we left, my dad threw a USB drive to the reporters, then looked at my foster parents. Those who do wrong must pay the price. I looked at them with mixed feelings. My foster mom rushed over. Chloe, we were wrong before, but we raised you after all. I smiled, but we're no longer related. She stood there, stunned. We got into the car and left. That night, everything about me was cleared up. As for the USB drive, it contained evidence of Ella planning everything. I didn't understand why she targeted me, so I met with her. She cried, begging for my forgiveness, saying she was just jealous that I took her place as a wealthy heiress for so many years. I told her I wouldn't forgive her. I was a passive participant in becoming a foster child, yet I had to bear the consequences. I also told her about the over 3,000 days and nights I endured, and the price I paid to grow. Finally, I told her that people must pay for their mistakes. I wouldn't call the police, but the stains on her record would follow her forever. As for my foster parents, they raised me, and for that, I am grateful. I won't repay kindness with vengeance. But during those thousands of days and nights, I already repaid their kindness. In the future, we will have no further contact. I'm very lucky. Even in desperate times, I always held on to hope, and in good times, I kept my original intentions. Even if I weren't Vincent's daughter, I believe I would still have a good life.